Okay, so we can get started now. Mr. Simon, you can share your presentation.
Okay, oops. Let me share the screen. Um, can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, hi, I am Jonathan Simon with Simon Academics, www.simonabc.com. And I do a lot of writing, teaching, and I do a lot of college counseling. So we're in Fremont. I don't know where everybody is, but yeah, we're at the Five Corners area in Fremont and Irvington at the end of Washington Boulevard, where it hits Fremont Boulevard. We're in the second floor up there. So I'm the founder, I'm the owner. I have been doing college counseling for about 12 years. I think I'm going on 13 years now. Been teaching for about 20 years. I'm a credentialed teacher. Before that, I was a journalist. And before that, I was a video game and computer hardware reviewer. But mostly I do writing and college counseling. Berkeley graduate, go Bears. This is me back in my modeling career. That's a joke. I never look like that. So schools I've helped kids get into. No, I've not helped people get into Ohlone and community college. I've helped kids get into all kinds of schools. Harvard, Yale, Berkeley, UIUC, Texas, Austin, I mean, basically Michigan, pretty much you name it, I've helped somebody get in there. But it also goes down to the UCs. Some kids getting into Riverside, UC Riverside is actually considering their GPA, considering test scores, a really good achievement. And I've never had anybody fail to get into Riverside, even kids who are beneath the 25th percentile for Riverside, I've helped get in. So people were asking about my process. So I will tell you about that. So when I'm doing college counseling, I prefer starting in 9th or 10th grade. Because if it's 9th or 10th grade, then you have a lot of time to do things. You have a lot of time to make some good decisions. If you come to me in 11th grade, there's some time. If you come to me in 12th grade and it's like, oh, it's time to do my apps, not so much. So I do like to start early, but for the actual applications themselves, I typically start in
Yes,
June.
he's helped kids get into Olum.
Maybe we can mute the other people. Thank you. I typically start the UCs in June, right after school ends, and then meet probably 1 hour once a week, sometimes more, sometimes less, all the way through summer. We start the UCs first because they're very generic prompts that are applicable to the other private schools, as opposed to the private school prompts, which typically are more specific and they don't fit in the other direction onto the UCs. Plus, you do one UC app, you're covering all of the UCs. So it's like you're getting 9 schools in one. And then typically my process is I have you write first. And then I ask for more information. I need to know more. I need to know the details. Sometimes it's like pulling teeth, but it's really important to get that information so that I can help you. And then I help organize essays out of the stories that you guys tell. Revising is the bulk of the process then, and we just go through iteration after iteration after iteration. A lot of places will stop after 2 or 3 edits. We don't do that. We take a lot longer, and we're really trying to present our students in the best way possible. And then when we're done, we might take a month break or so, and then we go back and we take a look and we can see if we can make it better. And if we start with the UCs and then we work on the private schools, we often go back and have new things to do with the UC essays to make them even better, because the UCs aren't due until the end of November. Typically private schools are going to be due around then as well, but some are due earlier, some are due later, some are due as some of the private schools are due as late as in January. So it just depends. And then you get some schools that actually have rolling admissions. Those are nice because if you get into a university with a rolling admission, you get like a sense of relief because it's December, you already know you got in to at least a university of a certain level, and you can relax. So we usually start in June, 1 hour a week. This is kind of the general timeline. The UCs were typically done by September, but sometimes it takes longer. And then the privates, so like the Common App doesn't come out until August, and the main Common App typically doesn't change, but the extra bits that they ask for from different private schools, those can change year by year. And there's so many schools, there's typically several that do change every year. And then of course, how long it takes also depends on how many schools do you apply to. So I typically cap it at 20 schools in addition to the UCs, but more realistically, people apply to somewhere around 12 additional universities. And by then they're just like, what happens is you start realizing, hey, I don't need to keep applying to these schools because I'm gonna get into something good enough. And I've already applied to enough similar schools that I feel confident that I'm gonna get what I want. And then the other thing about it is, so you know how it is in high school where you don't typically care that much about your writing. You're just trying to get the work done. But this is often the very first time that somebody really cares about something they're writing. You don't, and so people take the edits very seriously, and it ends up being the best writing class that a kid will ever take because they're getting a lot of one-on-one attention on essays that they really care about the results of. Great essays are honest. It's very easy to lie, and a lot of people do, but it's your life. Honesty is, I think, the best way to live it. You want it to be clear. Most people do not write clearly, so it takes a lot of work to do so. Editing a lot is vital to making a good essay. It's certainly possible to make something that sounds pretty, but to be pretty and clear and get other things done at the same time, that's far more difficult. You want to be charismatic. You want to seem interesting. You want to seem likable. Of course, the content is vital. If all you've done for your 4 years of high school is crossword puzzles,
Okay.
if all you've done for the last 4 years of high school is crossword puzzles and jigsaw puzzles, we're going to have a lot of trouble helping you write an essay that's going to be worthwhile. And that's, again, why I like to get kids in 9th or 10th grade, because then we have plenty of time to develop who they are. And then in the end, what you want is for whoever to read this to love you, to remember who you are. Because the people who are reading these applications, they're reading a lot of applications. They're not reading 5 or 10. And so you want them to very much, oh, I really want this kid to go there. That you want them to fight for you because they're in committees and they have a lot of really wonderful candidates to choose from. The do's and the don'ts, do get help, get a life preserver, get help, because I've just seen kids with good resumes, good experiences, choke on the essays. And you're less likely to choke on the essays if you get some help. It doesn't happen all the time. A lot of people are capable of doing fine on their own. They would do better with help. It doesn't have to be me, but I do think getting help is worthwhile. Be honest. being honest is vital. I mean, this is a defining moment of your life, and that's important. Again, editing is absolutely central to making a good essay. And you're not going to be able to necessarily do all that editing on your own. You want to have help. Even if it's just friends giving you feedback, that can be useful. And then don't procrastinate. Very bad to procrastinate. If I get a call in late October saying, come help me, there's not much I can do. Again, don't lie, be honest. A lot of people lie, and you are all going to know people who lie on their applications. You can get caught, you can get blocked from schools, you can get blackballed from a bunch of schools. It's not worth it. And it's, you know, your character is very important. It's basically all you really have. And then I have this inspirational message. Remember, this is a don't. You'll never be good enough for everyone. Luckily, all you have to be is good enough for you. No, keep working at it. Try to be better. Just keep trying to be better. Everything you do is valuable. And in the end, if you get into, I mean, you're going to get into a school, right? There's always an option. You can always do 2 years at a community college, transfer to a university. But if you're working all the time to try to make yourself better, not to be exactly what colleges want, but to be the very best version of yourself, then it'll all be worthwhile. Don't settle. Don't go halfway. Let's see. Oh, it made me go all the way back. I did that out of order. Scoring. When I get an essay from a kid on a scale of 1 to 10, most of the time the rough drafts I see are somewhere between like a 0 and a 3. Pretty low. If it's a really good draft from a very good writer, I would typically call them a 5. And a lot of the essays I see from other people who've worked with other counselors, they end up being around a 5 or a 6, even with help. They're just okay. And I mean, you've got your GPA and you've got your test scores, wherever these fall. The essay is your last chance to push yourself above. The essays, they let you go, they let you punch above your GPA, they let you punch above your test scores, but they're going to be based upon your extracurriculars. You've got to present them as well as you possibly can. So my goal typically is to get all of the essays at like an 8 or above. If we can get a 10 in, that's wonderful. Doesn't always happen because I've got to have something to work with. And I literally have helped a kid write an essay about jigsaw puzzles because it was what she spent her time on. Not the best essay. I've had a kid write about putting his Lego sets together. Again, I mean, that was like not the best essay, but it was honest. And you need to do the best honesty you can. You know, much better to talk about how you did something, you know, really interesting, really awesome. And that's where getting help like counseling can come in. Now, of course, you know, the basics of it are very clear. You know, you take the hardest classes, you take as many APs as you possibly can, you self-study for more, you become, you know, varsity in 2 sports, you become an amazing piano player and you get straight A's and you get 25s on your AP tests and a 1600 on the SAT. I mean, you do all that stuff. Of course, you're going to get into a great school, but most of us are not capable of doing everything perfectly. Only a very tiny percentage of people are. So part of the deal is finding you in all of that and making you the best version of yourself in all of that. And that's why getting counseling when you're younger is a very valuable thing. So I highly recommend it. And again, it's very customized because you know, everybody has different interests, everybody has different capabilities, and everybody has different tolerances for work. I know some kids, some people, some adults who can work 90, 100 hours a week for all their life and they're very happy. And I know other people who after about 30 hours of week, 30 hours of work in a week are absolutely exhausted and they're struggling to get themselves out of bed. So you have to, you know, also find your ability because a lot of people burn out, especially in junior year. And burnout is a really big problem, especially in Fremont, especially American Mission and Irvington. I've seen a lot of kids start out really strong and they don't pay attention to their unhappiness and then they just crash and burn. And you get somebody who was really on track for, you know, Berkeley or similar, and they end up at Santa Cruz or something like that. Not that that's the end of the world. And that brings up another kind of important piece of information. In the end, it's who you are. It's not the school you go to. So there is absolutely value in going to a higher tier school, especially if you can get into an Ivy League or if you can get into Berkeley. There are a lot of doors that just open up because you've gone to this kind of school. But in the end, it's your capabilities that matter, because once you go through that door, you've got to be able to get the job done. And then once you get into the work world, people pay attention to what you do far more than what school you went to. You can't, I mean, you can ask your parents if you look around the office, if you don't know somebody's alma mater, you're not going to be able to just look at them and tell whether they went to San Jose State for computer science or they went to MIT for computer science, because there are San Jose State grads who are fantastic and there are MIT grads who are mediocre. There's all types in this world. So, you know, that's pretty much it. Jess, what's next?
Okay, so now we have some Q&A. So
Okay, sure.
you can stop sharing. I'll share it.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen for the Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
Give me 1 minute. Can everyone see this? Okay,
Yep.
so we're just gonna go through this. So the first question that we got was, when is the best time to start writing your college essays?
As soon as you've recovered from the end of junior year is when you want to start.
Okay, so I guess we can move on then.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense to start earlier than that. And if you start later, you're going to be in a rush and you're not going to do a very good job.
Okay. A lot of people also wanted to know, how can you stand out in your essays?
It depends partly on the quality of the writing, and then it's a lot about what you've done.
Okay.
So if, you know, like I said, if you sat at home doing jigsaw puzzles and just getting homework done, that's not that big a deal, and it's not going to show that well. But if you have made good use of your time, if you've done, you know, interesting activities, that will help you stand out, I think.
Okay. Do you have any writing tips instead of like the content that would help you stand out in your essays?
Um, I don't have a specific way that an essay is written. And the reason is every kid, every idea, every person is different. And one of the reasons why I always have kids do a rough draft first is at least once every year, somebody comes up with some idea that I never would have thought of. And then the other thing is that you guys will never not, and if I'm working with a kid, they almost never tell me everything right away. Things kind of come out over time. So I might have a conversation where you'll tell me 20 different things. And then 5 weeks later, while working on an essay, you insert something new that is just like so wonderful that we have to focus on that thing. So content is the big thing. A lot of people say, oh, well, you should have dialogue or, and sometimes dialogue is great. Sometimes it's just a waste of words. You get 350 words in a UC essay. You've got 4 essays. In a lot of these like Yale prompts, you get 200 characters. And the average word is going to be about 7 characters, including spaces. You just don't have a lot of words to use. So, yeah, there just isn't one way. I mean, the best piece of advice is to just edit, and get some outside feedback, at least some of it. Because you're going to have blind spots on your own work.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so the next question is, how much bearing do essays have in the admissions process compared to other factors like academics and extracurricular?
So number 1 is your GPA. Number 2 and 3 are kind of tied is going to be your test scores and your essays, because your essays are how you show your extracurriculars. On the apps, yes, you get to list things, but you get such a small word count that it doesn't have much impact when you list all your extracurriculars. So it's really the essays are your extracurriculars. I mean, if you've done some amazing extracurriculars, you get to move up. If you have a perfect GPA and a perfect test score and you've done almost nothing, it drops you way down. So all of it adds together, and the more of the total package you are, the better off you are.
Okay.
There are a lot of other factors, but I'm not, it's just too much to list.
Okay. So some people really wanted some examples of what a good essay looks like. So I guess they're referring to the kind of structure good and successful essays are.
And so one of the things I actually recommend against is looking at sample essays. Because if you go buy a book, I mean, I've looked at books of sample essays. I've looked at, oh, this kid got into 5 Ivy League universities, right? And then you read about how their mom was in prison and their dad got AIDS when they were 11, and they started taking care of their baby brother and their 2 younger siblings, one who has autism, while getting straight A's and a 1600 on the SAT and working a job at McDonald's. That's not you. Right? I mean, I hope that's not you, because that's a terrible, difficult story. Or there's the other kid who founded an international nonprofit that has a budget of $5 million a year. Again, that's not you. I mean, those kids don't need help. They're going to do great. And so you looking at their essays, it just doesn't do you any help. And it distracts you. It's depressing. So no, I don't have an example. All of the essays I've ever written are different. I mean, there are some essays that are bragging. Sometimes there's essays that are talking about a hardship. There are essays that talk about a passion. But as far as structuring those, the sky is the limit. There's not, what I would actually recommend against is trying to do something fancy. You know, I'm going to make my entire essay into a metaphor about rainbows. Don't do that kind of thing, because every word you spend trying to do something fancy is a word you don't spend trying to give useful information. You want to be dense with information, telling an emotionally compelling story. And it's just not the same as writing like a chunk format essay for your AP language exam. It's just a very different thing, and it just varies a lot. And you all have to do it in a tiny word count. So it's difficult. It is difficult. Sorry, there's no easy answer there.
Sorry. Okay, and from an admissions officer point of view, what do you think they would look for when looking at college students' essays?
I mean, I think all of yeah, I mean, they want as much of an achiever, a leader, a caring person, an interesting person. They're looking for somebody who took all the hardest classes and did perfectly, and who's amazing, you know, and I'm a professional piano player and a ballerina. And they just, I mean, the more impressive you are, the better it is, but you know, when you don't lie about it. One is it's actually pretty easy to tell if somebody's lying. Two is, I mean, yeah, I mean, if just, I think you guys know this, right? I mean, they want everything as perfect as possible. There's no secret sauce there. You know about doing extracurriculars, you know about doing sports, you know about doing arts. It's just the more you do, the better you are, and the better you present that, the better your chances are of getting into any particular school. And the more unique you are, the stronger your voice in the essay, the more you have a personality. There's a lot that goes into it.
Okay, great. A lot of people also wanted to know around what time you should start looking for people to help you with your essays.
Well, so essays, I would just start from the start in after junior year ends, the summer. That's when I liked, and usually by then I have people helping. But as far as like finding somebody, most kids are coming to me in like December during junior year or earlier. So typically by yeah, because you still have time to at least make some changes to the activities and things you're doing, as far as getting ready, you know, getting a little bit of counseling in before you do the essays. But as far as actual counseling goes, pre-essay, because it's what you do that forms the content that goes into the essay. That 8th grade is early, 9th grade is pretty good, 10th grade is fine, 11th grade it's getting pretty late. And you know, the kids who are destined for Harvard and such, I mean, they are already kicking butt really early on. They're really doing amazing things from really early on. And yeah, so thinking of one kid where, you know, she was in 8th grade, we did counseling, and she had already gotten a perfect score in the ACT, and she already had passed like 5 self-studied AP exams with 5s, you know, and she was just finishing 8th grade. Is anybody here like that? Good for you. But the vast majority of people are not capable of that. So yeah.
Okay, and the next question is, should you adapt UC essays for your Common App essay, or should you adapt your Common App essays for your UC essay?
You've got 4 UC essays. You've got the Common App, and then you've got all the supplements. A lot of the supplements are why do you want to go to our specific school? So you start with the UCs, and then you either combine 2 of them to make your Common App, or you take one and expand it to make your Common App. Sometimes you have to write a whole new essay. because once you start looking at the supplements for the specific schools you apply to, you find that, well, this UC goes here, this UC goes there. Sometimes it's easy and one of your UC essays doesn't fit the supplements and it's not being used anywhere, so you get to expand it. Sometimes you're unlucky and you're using all of your UC essays. You have to write a whole new essay, or you write 2 common apps because you write one for these 10 schools and then another one for these 3 schools because of the way their supplements overlap or differ from what the UCs ask for.
Okay. Next question is, should your Common App essay talk about all the extracurriculars or most of the extracurriculars that you did?
It just depends on what your supplements are for those different schools. There's nothing about the Common App that says list all your extracurriculars. It could have nothing to do with your extracurriculars. So it just depends on the individual and the schools.
Okay, so like building off of that, would you recommend, like, in general for your college essays, like in total, like trying to list as many of the extracurriculars that you did and like elaborate on that in a way that you can't do in the Common App?
You can again, it depends. So sometimes there's an essay that is just like a list of all the different extracurricular things. Not like, oh, I do tennis and then I do piano, because those don't fit together. But something more like, here's my essay about all the different volunteer activities that I've done. And then that might be the Common App. And then but you don't want to just replicate your list of extracurriculars. That would be a pretty mediocre essay. You might focus in one area where, let's say you did 10 different volunteer activities. Well, maybe you just have one club that you did them all under. So that's just one entry on the extracurricular list, part of the app. And then you write an essay to show everything in detail. That whole strategizing process, there's no single answer. And I've done it every which way. And it's been successful every which way. So yeah, there's just not one answer. And when it's successful more when, of course, the kid has done more interesting things. And it's successful less when they've done less interesting things.
Okay. And I think you already kind of covered the answer for number 9, so we'll just kind of skip over that. And then for number 10, I know you already like went over some of the schools that the students that you've mentored have been accepted to, but could you go a little bit deeper into that?
Well, on our website, simonabc.com, I can show that to you. I mean, I've got a list. I didn't track every single school everybody has ever got into, but I put in some of the highlights. So last year I had one girl got into Berkeley. That was her top school. Another girl did not want to go to Berkeley, so she didn't apply, but she got into UCLA, and that was her top choice. They both felt very comfortable walking in. The girl who went to Berkeley, she applied to 0 private schools. She knew where she wanted to go, and she got in. Let's see what else. I've had a kid go to Yale. I've had a kid go to Harvard. I've had lots of kids go to Riverside. I've had a ton of kids get into UIUC, Urbana-Champaign, and then none of them have ever gone there ever, because they've always gotten into some other better school. I've had kids get into, was it Washington University in St. Louis? None of them went there. It's interesting because I think a lot of the focus is the biggest name brand school, but there's a lot of times where, the name brand is this high, but in your major, let's say you're a biochemistry major, the actual quality of the program is down here. And so now you have a choice. Do I go to the lesser known school or the less prestigious school with the worse program, or with the better program, or the more prestigious school with the worse program. So I mean, it's there's a lot that goes into it. I would say most people choose the more prestigious option. I think that is often a mistake. I once had a kid get a chancellor's scholarship at UC Riverside, and which is kind of like getting the private school treatment at a UC. And then a parent convinced his parent to make him go to Santa Cruz instead, where he did not have the chancellor's scholarship. And I think it was a very bad decision. I had another kid last year who, this was the girl who got into UCLA. There's a program at Santa Barbara that's this very small school program. It's like a school within a school, very creative, very private. You get strong relationships with your professors. So we had a couple of conversations about, should I go here or should I go there? She ended up choosing to go to UCLA. There's a whole list on the website if you're interested at simonabc.com.
Okay. And for participants, that link will be put in the chat later on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And in general, do you have like an estimate of how many drafts you should write per essay to get a good strong essay?
Gosh, I would figure that I typically do about 10 to 20 drafts per essay. But as the process goes on, it gets smaller. So the UCs are the hardest because they're your first essays. But by the time you're doing your third or fourth UC essay, you're much quicker. And then once you get to the private schools, it's much quicker again, because you've had all this practice, and it just kind of gets easier as you go on. And then you get to the private schools and suddenly you have to start writing, why do I want this particular school? Why do I want to go to Columbia or whatever? A lot of the private schools have that specific question. And then kids typically kind of come up with a formula to address that. Of course, if you've actually been to that school, if you've actually visited, had a tour, then you have something personal that you can put into that essay, and they really like that. If you're applying to that school and you put in oh, I visited, it was really amazing, I loved this part of it. That is a big plus as far as you getting into a private school. That doesn't do anything for most public schools because they typically don't have that kind of prompt.
Okay. And for the final question that we have right now, a lot of people wanted to know if you had good extracurriculars. Should you write a lot about that in your essays and focus on that aspect? Or should you talk about something a little bit more simple that showcases your personal values?
You have 4 essays, you can do both for the UCs. And you have the Common App and typically some supplements. So again, you can do all kinds of things. Do you have to do these? I mean, certainly getting something about your extracurricular activities is going to happen 99% of the time. Talking about your values, you show your values in everything you write. So values can go into all kinds of essays. You show your values with what you do. With what you write about. I wouldn't necessarily write an essay only about values, but I wouldn't be against it either. It just depends on the kid.
Okay. Would you recommend kind of a balance between both types?
Well, this implies that there's only 2 types of essays. And this implies that these are separate essays. So you should have these aspects if you can work them in, and many other aspects. You could talk about family, you could talk about religion, you could talk about politics, you can talk about athletics, you can talk about art. You've got, if you look at the 8 UC prompts, you only write 4 essays, they cover this huge broad area. And you're also going to be guided a lot by what you've done with your time. You know, you can talk about how you care so much about homelessness, but if you've never done anything about it, well, you're not going to be able to write about it. So you don't just write an essay about your values. Yeah.
Okay. That's all we have for now. So I'm gonna stop my sharing, and I think just someone here will take it from here.
That's all we had for today. Does anyone have any last minute questions? If not, we can. Oh, we have a question. Can you please, if we can talk about multiple achievements in a single essay?
Yes, that's totally possible. You know, you don't want a jumbled essay that I think somebody's typing. You don't want a jumbled essay that covers, you know, that makes no sense. But if it makes sense and it has some kind of cohesiveness, then why not?
Okay, I guess we'll just wait for like a few more minutes just to let anyone type up their questions in the chat, or feel free to unmute. Let's wait for like a minute or so.
Mhm. Can you get into an Ivy League if you do not take a standardized test? Are you an incredible athlete? That would be, if you're an amazing athlete, yes. But it depends on the school. I don't charge per essay. Right now, my price is $9,999 for the UCs. And then if you do the UCs plus up to 20 private schools, it's $19,999. If you want a year of college counseling, it's $4,999. If you want to just do hourly essay help, well, I don't do hourly essay help. It's too stressful because everybody's in a rush. If you want hourly college counseling, that's $499 an hour. But typically after like an hour, people either say, yes, this is the right thing and I need a lot more help in this area, and they sign up for the whole school year, or they say, okay, you know, this isn't what I need. Very few people do it like just a la carte hourly. And of course, you don't want to do it unless you're going to listen to the advice. There's no point in paying me or anybody for help if you're not going to try to do it. So if your problem is that you just like to sleep all day in bed and you hate doing anything, I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I'm not gonna, you know, turn you around that way. But if you're like, I really want to do better and I'm not sure how to do better and I'm not sure what's going to be more valuable, that's where I could be incredibly helpful. And I don't, when I give advice, I don't say, this is what you have to do. I say, here are a lot of possibilities based on what I know about you. Why don't you try some and see how they work? Why don't you see what they're like? And you're going to like some of it. You're not going to like some of it. You're going to figure it out. And then you start filling up your time with the things that you're interested in, that you're passionate about, that you care about, and that are going to look good on a college app, but most importantly, that, you know, that fill you with or that make you the best version of yourself. You know, I know Jess is not going to be you know, Jyothi. He is who he is. He can just be more of himself. He can be a better version of himself. That's what I aim for.
Again, there's more information on the website. I think just remember to send it in the chat.
Yes.
He'll send it once again, and of course we'll send out entire like recording of this with the presentation and all that in the chat as well.
Great. Great. Thank you.
Any more questions, anyone?
Well, the UCs don't care about the SAT or the ACT, but they are going to look at your AP scores. And the private schools, yeah, if you're applying to a school that accepts the SAT or the ACT, take it. And if I was going to, so we run an SAT, ACT boot camp that does both. And the reason we do both is there are a significant number of kids who do better on the ACT. It used to be that there were some kids who would do better on one or the other. Now it's you either do the same on both or you do better on the ACT. So I've seen some kids get like the equivalent of 100 points better on the ACT. And are AP scores that important? AP scores well, for the last couple of years, AP scores became super important because you could take the AP exam and not take the SAT. But it just yeah, AP scores, especially for the UCs, are a big deal these days. Especially if you can get a 5, right? You know, getting a bunch of 3s doesn't make you look that good. Getting a bunch of 5s makes you look really good. And of course, the more you do, the better. So, you know, how many APs do you recommend? I mean, if you are the kind of kid who can take 5 or 6 weighted classes in junior year and do all your extracurriculars and get a night's sleep and feel good about yourself and be happy and learn everything and then get 5s, you should do 5 or 6, 8, you know, weighted classes. If you're the kind of kid who you've never taken an honors class before, giving yourself 5 AP classes is a recipe for failure in your junior year. The more you, but you've also got your senior year to take AP classes. So you can put those in there as well. Yeah, so the most competitive kids are going to be taking 5 or 6 as a junior. The least competitive kids are going to be taking 1 or none. And most kids are going to struggle with 2 or 3 and still getting A's and getting great scores on those tests. Are self-studied IEPs valued? Yeah, I mean, everything is valued. But a self-studied 3 is not valued. A self-studied 5 is valued. A 4 is kind of middle ground. I mean, a 3 is passing. You self-study and get a 1 or a 2, it does not look good. Although you can, the College Board lets you like pay or just block your scores. But the UCs tell you that you have to report every score, and you sign a thing that says you're reporting every score, so you should report every score. So the kind of, you know, not everybody should, the kids who can get a 5 self-studying should self-study the APs. Otherwise, I just wouldn't even bother.
Definitely.
You're welcome.
Any last minute questions, anyone? Otherwise, I think we can wrap it up right here.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you so much for coming today. It was a pleasure
I
meeting
have
you.
another question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'd like the APs you took in the senior year like valued. Like, do they have effect?
Yes, the harder your senior year, the better you look. And yeah.
Okay. What about sophomore year? Like, does it also matter too?
So the UCs look at sophomore and junior year. They look at how hard your freshman year was. They look at everything. The better everything looks, the better you look. So everything matters. They'll look at your eighth, if you did algebra in 8th grade, they'll look at algebra scores in 8th grade. They're not going to calculate it in your GPA, but they will see that transcript, or they will ask for that grade, I should say. And some schools ask for the transcripts when you apply. Other schools ask for the transcripts after you've been admitted. And of course, if you lied, you don't get in.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Thank you, guys.
If no more questions, thank you so much for coming here. Again, it was a pleasure
Wait,
meeting
one
you.
last question. What about the courses at community college? Like, do they also matter as well?
Say that if you like take like a community college course.
Yeah, like
Those are like taking an AP course. They're treated that way, at least for the GPA.
okay.
But I would not take a community college course unless you are 95% sure you're going to get an A. You know, getting B's in that does not make you look great.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.